Hello, this is Pastor Steve with your message of hope for today. And our message begins back in the year of 1135 in what is today England proper. Henry I passes away without a true successor. He has a daughter, Matilda, but she and he are estranged, and Matilda, unfortunately for herself, did not come to attend the king at his deathbed. So his nephew, Stephen, takes advantage of the situation and comes in, and several weeks later, Stephen is crowned King of England, King Stephen I. Well, this begins a time called the Great Anarchy. And so for the next 20 some odd years, there is fighting back and forth between Stephen and Matilda, using the various lords and barons to see who is the true ruler of England. Stephen is even captured in battle and imprisoned at one point, but then is able to lay siege to Matilda with his loyal men even while he is imprisoned. Meanwhile, the regular people who are trying to work and go on are besieged from one side to the other with the divided loyalties and the problems and the difficulties in England. This is how one of the monks describes what is happening in the country. By night and day, people are seized by those whom they believe had any wealth, ordinary men and women, and put in prison to get gold and silver, and were tortured. They were hung up by their feet and smoked with foul smoke. They were hung by the thumbs or by the head. Then coats of mail were placed on their feet, knotted strings around their head and twisted. They were thrown in dungeons where there were adders and toads. Then when the wretched people had no more to give, their villages were plundered and burned, so that you could easily go a day's journey without ever finding a village inhabited or a field cultivated. Wherever the ground was tilled, the earth bore no corn, for the land was ruined by such doings. And men said openly that Christ and his saints slept. What an interesting time for England, and a dangerous time for the people. But the reason that's important is we know England thrives and lives even today in 2020. And some of its best days were yet to come. The Victorian age, the Elizabethan age, the succession of kings, the Plantagenet family with Henry II, and all the way through Henry VIII, and so on and so forth. The reason this is important, of course, is it helps us to understand that even in a very, very difficult and scary and frightening time, that God was there and he helped the people, and they survived and ultimately thrived. It helps me when I think about history that I recognize that there is almost no time when times haven't been a little uncertain. I grew up hearing my grandfathers talk about the First and Second World Wars and the Great Depression and how difficult those times were. They were both glorious and terrifying in some ways. And people wondered and worried about what was going to happen in the world and in the nation. We always are worrying, and we're in a time, as we've said, of great uncertainty in our world and in our nation. The pandemic, the upcoming election, social unrest. And yet, as we read in our scriptures, where we read about many wars and rumors of wars and about plagues and famine, but the one consistency is that God is there. His covenant is unbroken, and the people survive and then thrive. So it's interesting to me always to read history and to learn from it, to see some of the things that people have had to go through in the past and how they were able to have moments both of great tragedy and great glory in and through difficult circumstances. And it gives me hope that the God who was not asleep, as the monks said some men thought, but we know that God was there and he helped to carry his people through, just as he will help to carry us through. And that is our message of hope for today.